Here's my Week 9 college football playoff top 25. We are really getting into the nitty-gritty of the season. I'm super excited about it. What a great last couple of weeks of football, and the slate this weekend is phenomenal. So let's hop right into it without further ado. Coming in at number 25, UNLV. Now, I think this team, as long as they win out, has an opportunity to represent the group of five in the playoffs. This UNLV team, fun fact, they're the ones that had their starting quarterback, Matthew Sluka, opt out of the season in the middle of the season. After 3 games, he decided to redshirt because of some NIL issues. But since then, they are still on track to win at least 10 games, if not 11. They only have 1 loss. That was a 3-point overtime loss to Syracuse. I'm very impressed with what they've done so far this season. They have 2 Power 4 wins, and they face off against Boise State, who is obviously the group of 5 contender that everybody's talking about right now. So if they can go in at home and win this game, then they have a clear shot to the Mountain West Championship, and then an even clearer shot to the college football playoffs. So I've got them in number 25. We're going to see how they continue to perform. Fun fact, they actually are scoring more points per game now. I think it's close to 45 than they were with Matthew Sluka at the helm, which is about 40 points. So 25 UNLV. Let's move on to 24. At 24, I have Pitt. Now, a lot of raters or rankings or people in the AP poll have Pitt much higher than this. But to me, I don't necessarily find their record as impressive as everybody else does. Now, Eli Holstein has had an excellent start to his Pitt career, transfer from Alabama. And I do think that this Pitt team has a good chance to be undefeated going into playing a team like Clemson or SMU. But all that being said, I haven't been completely sold. I think their best win is against a Cincinnati team who is 5-2, but it's not an impressive 5-2. And then I have they have another win against North Carolina on the road, which earlier in the season might have been more impressive. But it seems like this North Carolina team is an absolute shambles. I mean, they let a mid-tier group of 5 team in James Madison come into their house and hang 70 on them. So that win to me for Pitt is not that impressive. They are undefeated. That's why they get into this top 25. That's where I've got them right now. Number 23, Syracuse. I would have them higher on my list, but I can't get caught too much into the emotion side of things. This bandwagon that I'm on here is something that nobody else has really been talking about, but Kyle McCord is absolutely torching every single team that they play. And it doesn't matter, honestly. I mean, they did struggle earlier in the year with Stanford, but since then, they've had good performance after good performance. Now, the one thing that kind of makes me hesitate a little bit when buying into Syracuse is their defense. They've allowed a lot of points so far this year, a ton of yards. They faced off against UNLV earlier this year, and I swear UNLV's wide receiver, who, by the way, look out for in the draft, Ricky White, had 1,000,000 yards and like 4 touchdowns. Now, obviously he didn't, but Syracuse's defense has got to step up for me to truly believe that they could be an ACC title contender. Do I think that they can beat a Miami? Yes. Do I think they can beat a Clemson? Yes. But is that like a 50-50 chance, or is that like a 25-75 chance? It's more like a 25-75 chance right now. So that's why I've got them at number 23. Number 22, Army. Wow. This team is unbelievably impressive. I think the quarterback's name is Bryson Daly. That sounds about right. Regardless, he had over 300 yards of offense and 6 touchdowns this past Saturday. What Army does is unlike any other team. They have a game plan, and they only execute the game plan. It's not about making plays. It's about making the play, turning what they have designed into a productive play. And they do it time and time again. They're one of the best rushing teams in the country. Their offense is obviously unorthodox in today's college football game. Obviously, it's old school, but What I'm really surprised about is how effective it is this year, and I think that's just because this Army team is disciplined. You don't see a lot of penalties, you don't see a lot of missed assignments, you just see guys doing their job, and that's what you have when you have a military style type team. They're going to come in and execute at a high level when you get everybody on the same page. All that being said, let's talk about number 21, Navy. Navy has been even more impressive in my opinion. Their offense is a little bit more explosive. No, they're not running the ball as well, but they are still running the ball pretty damn good. I think, once again, this is a Navy team that doesn't make mistakes. They could compete with anyone. I'm so unbelievably excited for the Navy-Notre Dame game this weekend. It's at MetLife. It's going to be a banger of a game. Now, Navy, of course, is like a 12.5-point underdog, but when you go up against a team that plays unorthodox style football, like Notre Dame's going to have to go up against Navy this weekend, you're going to run into some major issues. It's hard to game plan for a very specific type of offense that you never see when you play college football. So Navy has a potential to be a one-loss team by the end of this year, if not an undefeated team by the end of this year. And so that's why I've got them at number 21. Both of these teams, Navy and Army, are vying for the group of 5 spot in the playoffs. And if one of them wins out and has one loss, they're getting in. Next up, we've got Boise State. Now, Ashton Jeanty didn't perform last week, and he drops in the Heisman because people forget that Boise State exists. But my goodness gracious, this guy is on pace to smash so many records. He's done a phenomenal job at handling the hype and still continuing to carry this team. I think if he goes into UNLV and wins this game for Boise State, that really catapults him right back up there in the front-runner Heisman spot. Obviously, it's hard to win the Heisman when you play at Boise State, but once again, let me go back and talk again about what Boise State has been able to do so far this season. Their team is playing well around Jeanty, and so that's what I really want to focus on here when giving them this top 20 ranking. When you play up against a team like Oregon or Penn State or LSU or Notre Dame or Texas A&M, a top 10 style football team, one player cannot win you the game. You have to execute on an entire lineup basis. You can't have your offensive line messing up assignments, because then Ashton Jeanty has got to work twice as hard to get half as many yards. So I think Boise State has done a great job of executing at a high level so far this season. Their only loss to Oregon by 3 points is very impressive, considering Oregon right now is the number 1 AP top 25 team. That's why I've got them here at number 20. I think that they will be the group of 5 representative, but there's definitely still some room around, or wiggle room, I guess you would say, in the group of 5. Like I said, I've just named 4 group of 5 teams here, but they're the front runner. Number 19, Illinois. Not only did Illinois beat Michigan, but they beat them by playing their own style of football. Michigan could not run the ball, and Illinois returned the favor by pounding the rock. Luke Altmaier, their starting quarterback, only had like 80 yards passing, and Illinois won the game by 2 touchdowns. They had 4 scoring drives. I am unbelievably impressed with what Illinois has been able to do so far this season. They're going to potentially pose a threat later in the season as an upset type team. You can't sleep on them, but do I think that they're a Big Ten contending team? No. We saw this versus Penn State. They can be competitive. They can cover the spread, but they can't necessarily win that game. But I'm so surprised that Illinois has played the way that they have so far this year. They're playing identity football. They know who they are, and they're committing to it. And when you do that, it's enjoyable to watch. What I do want to talk about real quick, and maybe factored into the rankings a little bit, those uniforms last weekend were an absolute chef's kiss. If you guys don't know what I'm talking about, go back and look at those Illinois jerseys and their helmets. Their helmets are an actual work of art. Somebody spent like 1,000 hours painting all of those helmets. So unbelievably impressed with the dedication and the time that it took to make those. Illinois looked great last week. It was just a phenomenal performance all around, and they looked good doing it. So that's why I got them here at number 19. Moving on, number 18. This is a team that didn't play. It's SMU. We still can't forget about these guys. I think that they pose the biggest threat to Miami and Clemson in the ACC. They have not lost an ACC game so far this year, and the only team they've lost to is an undefeated BYU team. And it was a pretty damn close game. Now, Kevin Jennings, since taking over the starting spot, has had some very impressive performances. I'm pretty sure that he is the starter that they were looking for this whole time. And I think that SMU can go into anywhere in the ACC and put up at least 35 points. This offense is off the charts explosive. Rhett Lashley, the head coach, has done a great job of getting their players ready to absolutely torch the field every single week, and that's why I've got them here at number 18. We are going to have to continue to look out for them because I think the media is pretty much fallen asleep on them completely. Number 17, undefeated BYU. I would have them higher if it weren't for all of these either lucky games where they blow the doors off of Kansas State, but was it really BYU like dominating, or was it Kansas State making just a ton of mistakes on the road? I think that's what it was. BYU is still top 5 in college football in luck. On top of that, they play up against an Oklahoma State team who has been struggling offensively all year long, and they let up 42 points. Now, they do win the game. I think that's impressive, but BYU down one spot from my last ranking. I still don't necessarily buy into them completely, but their head coach, their quarterback, it seems like a Cinderella story, absolutely made golden, I think. I do want to re-emphasize that BYU has got a tough schedule to close out the year. They are a Big 12 title contender just because of their record and because of their performance. So I want to tip my cap to them and say congrats on being undefeated. But right now you're at number 17. I need a couple of more prove-it games before I put them further up the list. Number 16 is the team that they beat, but a team that still looks better on the field, Kansas State. Down 2 spots still, but still Kansas State is in this top 25 at number 16. Avery Johnson has done a great job of defying the odds here as a young quarterback on the road. They had a very impressive win versus Colorado. I do want to talk about the fact that this defense has not necessarily played up to the standard that we kind of thought that they would, but they have pretty much been on their heels the whole season. I think once they get their feet completely on the ground that they'll start to take off and perform at a higher level. That's why I've got them here at number 16. They have some room to improve, but I do think that this is probably the second best Big 12 team. We're going to get to the first best in just a little bit, but let's move on to number 15, Ole Miss. Now, a lot of people are just off Ole Miss, but 2 things I want to talk about. Number 1, their 2 losses are to a Kentucky team by 3 points and then an LSU team in overtime. Yes, they have 2 losses, but guess what they are now? Motivated and desperate. Jackson Dart, press conference after the LSU game, got to win out from here. They have a very tough schedule, including playing Georgia at home. I think that they can still pull off an upset if Georgia doesn't come in there on their A game. Very similar to what happened with Alabama. You're going to see Lane Kiffin drop some beautiful game plan and torch Georgia in the first half. They're going to have to make some adjustments, try to storm back in the second half. But that's why I have them at 15. I'm not sold that they can do that. I thought this Ole Miss team was going to be much more explosive on offense when it came to SEC play. It seems like they've got to do some major adjustments here to get into the second half of the season and finish strong. But Jackson Dart is still a top 10 quarterback. I know he struggled, but he still has the arm talent, the athleticism. I think he's able to read in the pocket. So I've got them at number 15. That's a few steps higher than most other teams. But moving on, number 14, Indiana. My goodness. Curt Cignetti could not have had a better start to the season. What a blowout performance against Nebraska. Talk about tipping the cap. This team gets the whole hat off. Wow, just unbelievable what they've been able to do to start the season. I cannot believe that they're still undefeated. And now I'm starting to get sold that this Indiana team can compete with Ohio State this year. I mean, what in the hell is going on in college football? But that being said, their defense played lights out versus a Nebraska team that was competent on offense. That's a big highlight. And then their offense, once again, so unbelievably explosive. They're a top 2 offense in the league, and they might not be 2. So that's why I've got them here at number 14. Number 13, Alabama. Oh, I don't know what else to say about this Alabama team. Now they're number 15 in the AP Top 25. The offense is struggling, and I think it's because not necessarily of scheme. I'm not going to sit here and be like, I know better. I know how to call the plays better than a guy who's won everywhere he's gone in Kalen DeBoer. That's not what I'm going to do. But it does seem like they're asking their offense to be something that they're not. They're asking their offense to be not necessarily gimmicky, but it just doesn't fit the mold. They're not asking their playmakers to make plays in the right way. It seems like they're force-feeding Ryan Williams, which I get it. He's a great athlete, but every defense knows on a 3rd and 7, the ball's going to Ryan Williams. The offense just doesn't look that great. I want to point out just a little bit. They faked an injury against Tennessee to stop some substitution issues. Filth. Awful. But number 13, Alabama, they have so much room to improve here. The offense has to get much better. I thought the defense played pretty well in the first half versus Tennessee, but after the offense fails to give them anything time and time again, the floodgates finally open, and that's why Tennessee was able to beat them. That's why I've got them here at number 13. They still have an opportunity to beat anybody in college football, but now they also have the opportunity to lose to anybody in college football. Number 13, Alabama. Number 12, Iowa State. Now, my goodness gracious, what a sweat of a game versus UCF. Got to play better when you play a struggling team like that who's benched its starting quarterback and does not look that great on offense. But Iowa State squeaks out a win. They are still undefeated. I have them here at number 12. I don't necessarily think they can beat a Texas, a Clemson, a Miami, or especially a Georgia and Oregon or an Ohio State. But Matt Campbell has done a great job of keeping his team poised and together even when they're down. And that's something to be not necessarily surprised about, but just overall impressed with. That's why I have them here at number 12. We're going to move on now to number 11, Tennessee. A lot of people have them higher. I don't think that that's necessarily the best thing to do. They beat an Alabama team who is absolutely in shambles on the offensive side of the football. And then on the defensive side of the football, they looked a little put together in the first half, but the second half, it was ugly. Tennessee was able to do one thing that they really have not been able to do versus Alabama and other physical teams, and that's run the damn football. Oh, it was a thing of beauty to watch them actually hand the ball off and get 5 yards consistently versus an Alabama team who's basically been able to bully them for the last 16 or so years. Another win in Neyland Stadium versus a top 5 or a top 10 opponent. Great win for Tennessee. Their fans loved it. I enjoyed it. Obviously not as much as the Tennessee fans, but number 11, Tennessee, the reason I have them here is because I think this win versus Alabama is a little overhyped. Are they going to be able to do this against Georgia? Will they be able to do that against an LSU, a Texas A&M? I'm not so sure because all three of those offenses and defenses look far more competent than Alabama's. So that's why I have them here at number 11. I need a prove-it game to put them higher. So number 11, Tennessee. Number 10, Texas A&M. Now, they struggled a little bit versus Mississippi State, but the wheels finally started rolling, and they took off and won the game. I think Texas A&M's defense is something to really write home about. They have been able to perform all season long at a very high level. They could get to the quarterback. They could stop the run. They're pretty elite in the passing game. Now, yes, I know they struggled against Mississippi State, but it's just it's a fall asleep game, okay? I mean, Mississippi State, nobody's really getting up for them, and they're all probably looking forward to this weekend's game versus LSU. I'm pretty sure that A&M has a chance to go undefeated for the rest of the year, including beating Texas at the end of the season. We're going to talk about that in another video, but right now they are at number 10. Conner Weigman, once again, I think he is a pretty good quarterback. Is he a top 10 quarterback? Not necessarily, but I think he can make the right plays to win you a big football game like this weekend versus LSU. That's why I got them at number 10. Number 9, Notre Dame. Once again, blowing the doors off a team that they needed to blow the doors off of. Really impressed with what Notre Dame has been able to do since their loss to Northern Illinois. I think, once again, teams are sleeping on them. The AP poll is sleeping on them. This is a top 10 team. This is a top maybe 5 defense in college football, and the offense is finally getting rolling. Riley Leonard looks much better than he did at the beginning of the season. At the beginning of the season, he kind of looked like a little lost lamb, but now he looks like the starting quarterback of a top 10 team in Notre Dame. That's all I'll say about him for right now. They're well coached. They execute on both sides of football, and they do it at a top 10 level. That's why they're at number 9. Number 8, Miami. As much good things as I can say about the Miami offense, I could say almost just as many bad things about the Miami defense. Man, another shootout and a close game versus Louisville. Miami was in the driver's seat for the majority of the game, and so that I will give them credit for, but Cam Ward cannot continue to try to win these big games scoring 45 plus points every single time. Eventually, it's not going to work. Eventually, they're going to run into a team that has a good defense, and that defense, Miami's defense, is going to have to step up and create a turnover or create a stop to win Miami a football game. The only time I can think of that is when they stopped a Hail Mary versus Virginia Tech, and that's really controversial. So that's why I got them here at number 8. They moved down a spot. Moving up 2 spots is their ACC counterpart, Clemson. Great win versus Virginia, who people have been sleeping on all season. The offense is unbelievable to what we saw at the beginning of the season. They're a top 5 offense, and their defense has been playing not elite, but they've been playing pretty damn good. I think they let up a few touchdowns there at the end of the game. The starters probably decided to take their foot off the gas and whatnot, but the offense has been amazing. Cade Klubnik looks like a top 10 quarterback. Looks like a potential Heisman candidate, in my opinion. He's been lighting it up. Dabo Swinney, yes, I know everybody could talk about the name, image, and likeness stuff. They could talk about the transfer portal stuff. But one thing that he does is he believes in his guys, and that's why they're in all of these games, winning and in control of all of them. That's why I have them here at number 7. They look like a more cohesive unit than Miami right now. But moving on, number 6, Texas. Whoa, pump the brakes on Texas. They did not look good at all on either. Well, their defense looked okay, but their offense looked atrocious. Georgia made them look like a high school football team. Quinn Ewers getting benched for Arch Manning and then getting brought back into the game. Woo. Not a good look for Texas there. They performed horrendously. If it wasn't for a couple of late drives, I think this game could have been even uglier. Texas's defense was put in a lot of bad spots after some turnovers from the Longhorns. Georgia scores 30 points. They don't necessarily look like the best on offense, but their defense showed up to play. Kirby Smart has those guys motivated. They're not going to get it. They're not going into a game trying to get another loss like the Alabama one. And to be honest, Georgia, if it wasn't for the first half of the Alabama game, would be the best team in college football unanimously and be undefeated. So Texas, yes, they lost pretty poorly versus Georgia, but that Georgia team looks like the best team in the country. So I only dropped them to 6. They have not played an elite offense yet, and that's what I'm worried about for this Texas defense. Versus Georgia, they let up the most points they have all season long. And if they played another elite offense, I think the floodgates might open. So I'll have them here at number 6 for now. Moving on to number 5, LSU. LSU's offense is that elite offense that I'm talking about that Texas should be worrying about. I am a big believer that LSU's defense is finally here to stay. They have figured out who they are, and that is a physical team that gets to the quarterback. When you get to the quarterback as much as LSU has been over the last couple of games, you create turnovers and you create big third down situations. And that's exactly what happened versus Arkansas. The defense played out of their minds. The offense on the road started off a little slow, only scoring 16 points, I think, in the first 3 quarters. Arkansas had a chance to go ahead and kick a field goal, or they were close to kicking a field goal and making it a 13-16 game. LSU's defense showed up, created a massive turnover, and put LSU on, I think, the 2-yard line. They scored there, and the game was completely out of reach by that point. LSU's offense got rolling. Another massive win versus a pretty tough and underrated Arkansas team. I think that was the sleeper game. People are kind of looking forward to this Texas A&M game, but LSU stayed disciplined and went out and executed on the road. Very impressed with what they've done so far in the year coming back from that USC loss. That's why I got them here at number 5. Moving on to number 4, Penn State. I give them this because they are still undefeated and they have a decent record because of their win versus Illinois. But the big thing is are they gonna beat Ohio State? I think Penn State goes and wins out the rest of the year. They're 11-1. They beat USC on the road. That was probably their last tough game outside of Ohio State. Shoot, man. I don't know. I don't know what to think of this Penn State team. They can run the football really well. Drew Aller still has to show me that he can show up in a big spot and dominate a football game. I've yet to see it. I need to see it versus Ohio State. It's got to be at home. I don't know who necessarily I'm going to pick here, but right now, Penn State, their defense has shown up at a lot of these games and played really well, holding Illinois to, I think, 7 points. That's pretty damn impressive with what Illinois has been able to do all season. So right now, they get the benefit of the doubt from me. They're at number 4. Number 3, Ohio State. Now, obviously, they lose to Oregon a couple weeks ago. I already talked about this. I'm not really going to discredit them that much for losing to a top 3 team on the road by 1 point and 1 second. If Will Howard has another second on that clock, Ohio State calls its timeout. It kicks the game-winning field goal, and they're undefeated and probably the number 1 team in college football. So that's why they're at number 3 for me. Number 2, Oregon. Now, we're all going to be surprised at who's at number 1, but Oregon right now is at number 2. Very impressive win versus Ohio State. They are just destroying on offense. Dillon Gabriel is finally making the Heisman case that everybody thought that he would be making at the start of the season. He was the Heisman frontrunner in the preseason, and now he's starting to look like it. He's not necessarily there yet. He's got to have a couple more big games, which it's on the slate. He's available to do so on a national scale. I think they have to play Michigan, and that's going to be a big game, of course. So Oregon has done a great job of winning the games that they are supposed to win and winning them in tight spots. Versus Boise State, they win by game-winning field goal. They have to win that game. Versus Ohio State, they kick a game, or I think they score a game-winning touchdown. They had to score that touchdown. They're undefeated. Most people have it at number 1. I got them at number 2 because number 1, Georgia. Can't say enough about that Georgia win versus Texas. Kirby Smart came in there with guts and, quite frankly, excuse my French, with some balls. And he won that game, and he wasn't going to leave it to anybody else. Not the referees, not Steve Sarkisian, not the Texas fans throwing trash onto the field. That Georgia team came in pissed off. They're going to play pissed off for the rest of the year. You don't lose to a team like Alabama and then show out for the rest of the year that you're a disappointment. No, you show out that you are the best team in college football. I'm a firm believer that they are. The offense didn't play that great at all, but they're on the road in one of the most hostile environments in the SEC, and they still put up 30 points. The defense played lights out versus, statistically, the second or third best offense in college football. I mean, what else am I supposed to say here? I mean, that road win is the most impressive road win of the season out of any team. Georgia, by God, probably goes undefeated. They dominate the rest of the football slate. That loss to Alabama might have been the best thing that ever happened to them because really, They only lost a half. When you go into that second half and you watch that game, Georgia played out of their minds. And that's exactly what Kirby Smart said in the locker room after that loss. He was like, I'm so proud of you guys. You didn't care about the score. You went in and executed in the second half. And in my opinion, you could chalk that game up as a win for me because you got the L technically, but you stay motivated and you know that you're not better than any other team unless you go out there and you prove it and you take it. Georgia number 1. That's going to do it for my college football playoff top 25. Next week, we're going to get into a bracket style. We're going to talk about the top 12. But all that being said, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.